she's not everything. Okay. All right. Good morning, afternoon, evening, everybody. Thank you for being here in this on this new session of the Alive Learning Forum. I'll just put my camera on. Sorry, here. Oh yeah. My name is Christian Mancilla. I'm just I'm not the host of this session, but I would just act as a deputy chair of this session. Like in the meantime, we just figure out that session. But thank you for being here. This session will be about tool to facilitate the uses and production of living evidence. We're very excited to have very two great speakers for this session, and we hope everything goes well. And we'll have a lot of interaction to learn about, right? So the first thing is just that we could start by a Mentimeter activity. Here you have you could just access menti.com and directly go into that into the code, and type in the code and or accessing directly the link that is below. So we could just ask a couple of questions from you. I'll share that my screen in a minute with that with the results, but you can start just putting your answers and see how they populate there. Sorry, I was on mute. So here's we're gonna see your answers. So please use the code that is on top of the screen to kind of answer any the questions that we're gonna populate there. This is only gonna take us a couple of minutes. I'll just put in the chat. Yeah. So the number is 670. And I'll share the link in a second. It's just I can't have another window for this. No. Okay, but we can see some answers. So yeah, so some people in Brazil, some people in Africa, South Africa, some people in the US, some people in Europe. Love to see a lot of people coming out from many parts of the world. All right. So I'll just double check if Josephine is here. No. Okay. So let's move on to the next question, right? So, that's great that you have already, some of them have moved, already responded some of this question, but essentially, what is the primary reason you registered for this session? We are really interested to know, what are your thoughts? What are your ideas? Why are you coming to this session to kind of learn more, and then how we can just get a discussion running from there, right? I see there's a lot of people. There's not a lot of curious people in this call, which is, but I assume everybody is, everybody on the other answers are also curious to learn about tools and living evidence, etc. But yeah, I think I'm glad to see the number of people that is interested in learning about tools, right? And I think that's so that's it for the interactive questions. We can come back to the main slides here. Yeah, great. Okay, so this was the time where I should be introducing the chair. So let me just double check one last time. If not, we can just move on. If she's maybe on the attendees, no, she's not. Let me just double check my email if she hasn't said anything. Okay. Yeah. All right. Let's move on then. I'll pass it if she's able to connect later. Yeah. So Yeah, so for today, for today's session, we'll have like the agenda of like Kaitlyn here, like presenting, and then Ian Shemilt as well. They're online. You can see them like right now in the as speakers, and then we'll have a panel discussion that will be facilitated, and then will be like some questions out of it, and then we'll have like a Q&A session and closure. Um, just a couple of notes about like us, right? So this is like one of the sessions that one of the many sessions that we have hosted like as part of the Alive Learning Forum, which is like a global exchange venue for an open access network where we can share innovation and strengthen living evidence partnerships in general. There are multilingual live translation sessions, and then we are like trying to strengthen our community by like a passing the voice among many people that like could be able and kind of like wanted to share their experiences and thoughts like during this. I see that Josephine is finally here. Sorry, Josephine, that you have like all of this strength, but I'll so what I'll do is just like I'll introduce yourself here, and then like, you can go from there. Okay.
Thank you
Josephine
so
is a
much.
credential like evaluator with a lot of experience on this. She's like a assistant director of the research service in the Parliament of Uganda. And she is like also the president of the Uganda Evaluation Association and has been a board. She has been like a board member of the International Development Evaluation Association and has received the African Evidence Leadership Award back in 2023. Josephine is also a PhD graduate in the program evaluation at the University of Cape Town. So over to you, Josephine. We just like finished the Menti activity, but we can just like go with the with this like the housekeeping rules, and then we'll go from there.
Okay, thank you so much. So because of the technicalities of logging in, I really apologize. Something happened to my system. It could not accept my login. Apology for that, but I want to appreciate everyone that is here. I'm not able now to turn on my camera, but for housekeeping, we want to maintain a lot of, concentration in terms of giving our presenters time to take us through. So we want to maintain our microphones off until you're really called upon to share. And this session will be shared at some point. So we are doing the recording. It's part of the consent for you to be here. And we normally add our participants to the mailing list. So you will be added automatically and you're free to unsubscribe. And in case of any questions, the email is provided for you here, alivecoordinator@aliveevidence.org, to take us through any questions or queries that you may have about our session. I think, Christian, you've already talked about the translation. I think I found you at that point.
I think it's coming in the next slide there.
Okay. So for those that want to move off the English, we have the live translation available for you at the top right corner of your screen. Choose your preferred language, and Wildly will be your support system to give you the opportunity to get into the language that you want to use. So on that note, since we are working around time, my minutes are already done for the introduction, but I'll be quick. We have two super presenters today. I'm excited to hear from them. Our session today, we are looking about the tools to facilitate the production and uses of living evidence. So that's why we are here today. So enjoy your time as you listen from two speakers. Kaitlyn will be taking us through an overview of the CAMARADES Solace initiative that describes the methodology and innovative value of this initiative. And later we'll focus on presenting the ARISE map to show its functionality on how the tool can contribute to researchers and evidence producers looking to find tools that ensure evidence reproducibility. And finally, she will provide some insights about her role in the Destiny Project and the relevance of non-human studies in evidence maps. Kaitlyn here is a Wellcome Trust Early Career Research Fellow and is managing this project that we are putting it in summary as CAMARADES. It's a long title, the collaboration to meta-analysis review of animal data from experimental studies. So it is CAMARADES. And then we shall have Ian Shemilt, who is the Associate Director for EPPI, and he will be providing an overview of the Living Evidence Synthesis Toolkit, a repository for methods, tools, and guidance for supporting living evidence. And he will further showcase the 5 main parts of the initiative, including a living map of methods and guidance, an introduction to living evidence, and then the prisma for living evidence synthesis. So let me allow them to take us off at this point, and we'll come up with our questions at the later point, but take note that we have on your screen the point where you can place your questions, the Q&A. We'll come back to that when we are done with the 2 presentations. So let's start with you, Kaitlyn. Welcome.
Thanks very much, Josephine. I'll just share my screen now. Second. Here we go. So hopefully you can all see my screen, and
Yes, please.
yeah, perfect. So thanks very much for the invitation to be here today. As mentioned, I'm going to be talking about an initiative called Systematic Online Living Evidence Summaries, or SOLS projects. And then I'll give an example of one of these projects as well and how we're using it to advance evidence synthesis. So this is probably quite obvious to this audience, but evidence synthesis approaches can, really help us make sense of the overall picture about what's happening in the wider scientific literature. And they should be used for all sorts of decision making, but there's 3 key challenges that we're sort of consistently facing that I wanted to touch on today that underline the development of why we developed SOLS in the first place. And the first one is that we can't keep up with the pace of evidence generation. So my background is actually in conducting systematic reviews and meta-analyses of animal research, looking at human diseases in animal models, and we would call them preclinical reviews, so they happen before the clinical reviews would happen. And in this space, only about half of the protocols that are out there are actually ending up in a systematic review, which gives you an indication of how many people give up halfway through. And on average, it takes 16.2 months to complete a review, but I have many examples of reviews that have taken much longer than that, unfortunately. And looking at Cochrane reviews of health evidence, we see that over half of them are published over 2 years after the original protocol, and most of them are not really kept up to date in line with the latest evidence. The second challenge is that we are consistently missing things. So if we use very traditional methodology when trying to locate studies, for example, using terms relating to the population, intervention, and maybe the outcome measures, we might actually be missing things because they're not represented clearly in the titles and abstracts. And this was a huge issue in the field that I was working in. So in the Alzheimer's disease space, looking at animal models, for example, most of the papers didn't mention all the outcome measures that I was interested in the title, abstract, or keywords. And quite often these papers have lots of different experiments in them, so it might not be realistic for everything to be mentioned in the abstract. Quite often it's just maybe the most exciting finding that's mentioned there. So it's very easy to miss relevant literature that's buried within the full text. And the third issue is that our tools for trying to automate and make systematic reviews more efficient are often quite inflexible and disconnected from each other. So quite often the best performing tools for example, systematic searching or deduplicating studies or extracting data from studies might not exchange data that well with other tools. There's a lot of, all-in-one solutions, so systematic review platforms, for example, where it's unclear how well each tool actually works within that pipeline and whether you can easily get data in and out. Also, they may be too rigid and not suitable for your specific use case. So all of this really came together, and over the last probably 5 or 6 years now, there's been a concept developing that we've called SOULS, which really borrows from the ideas of evidence gap maps and living evidence synthesis to help us make sense of the literature at a faster pace. So how we do this is essentially to conduct a really broad search of the literature in a given research area. So, for example, my background is in Alzheimer's disease, so we find all of the relevant literature in Alzheimer's disease, and then we apply a tool pipeline and infrastructure, which has lots of different tools within it to help us organize this research. And then at the very end, we end up with an interactive web interface that users can actually go on and interact with to explore the evidence in more detail. And this can act as a starting point to further systematic reviews and detailed synthesis. So we had our sort of main SOULS paper came out in 2023, but it's been running a bit longer than that. And we now actually have over 10 of these SOULS platforms running across different research domains spanning from Alzheimer's disease to the harms of pesticides, for example. So how does it work? Very briefly, I'll run you through this slide and hope that the animations work. So we start with a really broad systematic search across multiple databases, and we can automate this using APIs. We can then conduct automated deduplication. There's a number of different tools out there to do this, and we use one called Assist. We then take a sample of the records that have been retrieved and we screen them manually based on the title and abstract. And we would get human experts to do this work, usually a few thousand studies depending on the scope of the literature. Once we have those human decisions, we train and test a machine learning algorithm, and this was always based at the EPPI-Centre where I work now. And then using that algorithm, if it performs well enough, we can apply it to the remainder of the literature. And then we end up with a set of studies that are included. And those included studies, we would then automate the full text retrieval. We can do this using unpaywall. Multiple publishers have APIs that allow you to be able to do this as well. But it's easier for open access papers, of course. And once we have the full text, importantly, we're able to extract some information from those full texts and surface that, which makes it slightly easier in the long run to then find some of this information. So for the animal studies, we use dictionary-based approaches to extract information about the animal model, any drugs that have been evaluated, outcomes that have been evaluated, and any drugs that have been tested. And we can also extract some information about the transparency of the study. So for example, whether data and code are available, whether that's mentioned. More recently, we've been interested in applying large language models, especially for studies that are a bit more complicated, don't necessarily have uniform outcome measures or things described in the same way every time. And that's something I'll talk briefly about next in more detail. And then we take all of that annotated data together and we integrate sources like Crossref and OpenAlex, which are really large metadata repositories with lots of information about studies. We put all of that together in a database, and then that is the thing that sits behind these web platforms that I can introduce you to now. And just to say, all of this pipeline is it's mostly R-based, so the R statistical programming language. Some of it's in Python, and it uses R Shiny to visualize this information as well. So to give you one example, this is probably the most recent SOULS that we've done, and it's part of the iRise project, which stands for Improving Reproducibility in Science. This is an EU-funded consortium project that's still ongoing. And the goal for this SOULS project was to really bring together all the literature on tested and suggested interventions to improve the reproducibility of scientific research. I won't go into all these numbers because if you actually go to, I can share the link, but you can follow the link on this slide here as well. It goes into quite a lot of detail around the methodology and how we collected all this data and what some of the results were in terms of using the large language models for data extraction. But just to give you a sense, we started off with around, 120,000 studies. We ended up with around 16,000 relevant studies, and now we have performed automated data annotation on them using various tools, including large language models. And the sort of things that we were interested in were the interventions that had been tested in these studies. So this was quite often things like maybe open science training, or training in how to document code and that sort of thing, because it's all about trying to improve research quality and transparency. Who provided the intervention, whether it was a journal or an institution, for example, the target population, whether that was researchers or students, the discipline that this took place in, the research stage that was affected, where the research took place, any outcomes that were measured, and the type of evidence that was provided as well. So just to take you through a little bit about what this platform looks like as an example, and we've got an evidence gap map here, which you can hopefully see. I don't know how, it looks a bit small on my screen, but essentially this just is a bubble plot indicating the number of publications looking at different interventions for improving computational reproducibility, for example. You can see there's 43 in biomedical and health sciences, but you can interact with this in all sorts of different ways to slice and dice the data and look at it from different perspectives. We've also got nice visuals in the app showing, who's conducting this research, where is it coming from. And importantly, we've got the ability for users to search, filter, and download relevant references, which act as a starting point for systematic reviews or scoping reviews. And as part of the iRise project, there's 2 systematic reviews that are ongoing that kind of use this as a starting point to find the literature, which was a lot easier than trying to go to PubMed and Scopus and all these databases and starting from the very beginning. You can kind of start with a database that's already going to be more relevant to your research question. I just want to point out here, we've tried to be transparent about where the annotations have come from, whether they've come from a human or an AI tool. And it's something we're really interested in going forward, because we're still a little bit uncertain about how good the LLM-based annotations actually are. So we have a bit of a human-in-the-loop system where users can go on and suggest studies that are maybe missing in this database, or suggest that studies be removed if they're not relevant. And we've also got a way for humans to suggest annotations that should be edited. So where the LLM has actually gone wrong, humans can suggest changes, and then that gets reviewed by the team. I could go into a lot more detail on this, but hopefully we can touch on it in the discussion. So I just want to thank you for listening today, and a thanks to our funders, especially for the iRise project. And I also want to give a shout out especially to Sean Smith, who is the data scientist based at CAMARADES Edinburgh still, who has actually been hugely involved in this work and written a lot of the code, and I've worked very closely with over the years to make this happen. So thank you very much.
Thank you very much. That was really a nice, sharp presentation. And I like it from the point that you've completed on issues of transparency, for us to get to know what exactly all the source of this information and how it is interacting between AI and humans. So that's a very impressive approach. And the fact that this database has these capabilities where we can do all the search, the filter, and the download. So and you started very well by identifying our problems of sometimes we have too much, sometimes we have less in terms of missing. And so this tool is supposed to give us that flexibility of connecting between these the less and the missing, and sometimes where we have overload. So thank you so much. Allow me to first proceed to Ian, and then we'll go to the session where we come up with a few areas of discussion before we open up to the participants. Over to you, Ian.
Thanks, Josephine. Hi, everybody. I'm going to spend just a few minutes introducing the Living Evidence Synthesis Toolkit, or LES Toolkit, and signposting the resources that it contains. So the LES Toolkit is a living repository of methods, tools and guidance for supporting living evidence syntheses, which is hosted on a web page on the EPPI-Centre website. And this toolkit is still at an early stage of its development, and it will continue to evolve over time, maybe into something a bit more than a static web page. We'll take the look at the toolkit online together in a moment, but first just a little bit of background. So the Living Evidence Synthesis Toolkit is maintained on behalf of the NIHR Evidence Synthesis Group's Best Practice Working Group on Living Evidence Synthesis, which is a UK-based community of practice for sharing best practices in the planning, conduct and dissemination of living evidence syntheses among people working in UK National Institute for Health Research funded evidence synthesis groups, which produce various kinds of evidence syntheses for the NIHR Evidence Synthesis Programme. Evidence syntheses that aim to address knowledge gaps or meet specific needs in areas of importance to policymakers among this programme's national health, public health and social care partner organisations and audiences. The Best Practice Working Group on Living Evidence Synthesis has been convened by this specialist living evidence synthesis group on behalf of all of the UK evidence synthesis groups funded by the Evidence Synthesis Programme, which currently comprise 9 core evidence synthesis groups, of which one is the London Alliance for the Co-Production of Evidence Synthesis, or LACES, which I'm a part of, 3 specialised screening evidence synthesis groups, and the specialised living evidence synthesis group itself. And so there are people with substantive collective expertise and experience in producing living evidence syntheses across these groups. So the Best Practice Working Group is essentially about bringing those people together to share best practices in living evidence synthesis for the mutual benefit of our people and for our evidence synthesis groups' activities and outputs. The group was convened about 12 months ago, and I co-lead it along with Anna Knowles-Storr from Cochrane, who's also an investigator at another one of the ESGs, the Complex Review Synthesis Unit. And the Best Practices Working Group aims to provide a forum for discussion about living evidence synthesis methods, tools and workflows to facilitate capacity building for the judicious application and rigorous evaluation of the methods, tools and workflows, and also to develop agreed criteria and guidance for the use and application of living evidence synthesis to inform policy, practice and research, including consideration of topic suitability. And it's as part of this capacity building function that the group maintains the Living Evidence Synthesis Toolkit. So I'm just going to pause my presentation there and switch to an online demo, which is just off the web page. So what we can see here is that the LES Toolkit, as I said, is a living repository that currently contains a living map of living evidence synthesis methods and guidance, and we'll have a look a bit more at this in a moment. A series of articles from 2014 and then a subsequent series in the Journal of Clinical Epidemiology in 2017 that introduces the concept of and methods of living systematic reviews and living guidelines, so an introductory package. The third element is the PRISMA resources for reporting living systematic reviews. So we've got the web page, which includes an R package and Shiny app for creating PRISMA flow diagrams, and then we've got the journal articles and the data supplement to the journal article, the key journal article in the BMJ. The fourth thing is there are more journals than are listed here which will publish living systematic reviews, but here listed are some open access journals that have specifically invited publication of living systematic reviews and outlined additional editorial systems and processes to support them. So we've included those here. And then finally, there's a few, and this will grow, a few living evidence synthesis research programs and networks, including the ALIVE, and the Alive Learning Forum, and also the Living Evidence Atlas that's maintained by the Alive Learning Forum and Christian and his colleagues. So that's what's in the LES toolkit. Let's just have a little look at this living map of living evidence synthesis methods and guidance. Again, this is something where, in terms of the mapping and the classification of records, the coding scheme for these articles is going to evolve over time. At the moment, we've identified lots of articles up to the end of last year that were published up to the end of the last year. We're in the process, and at the moment the map just includes, I think, 3 or 4 articles that have been published into 2026, and we're in the ongoing process of identifying further records. So there's a little introduction pane in the middle here that says what the map is. Contains methods and guidance articles about living evidence syntheses, currently just organised by LES types, evidence maps, systematic reviews, economic models or guidelines, and we're going to have another category, I think, soon. And then, as I say, those are up to the end of 2025 with 2026 articles being developed. And it says a little bit about the scope. Essentially, it's articles that are methods and guidance, but and about the methods that we've used to identify these records. Which will evolve. And then we've got some guidance notes, and I'm just going to show you what's in those guidance notes. So that just includes, at the moment, a general statement about what living evidence synthesis is and what this map tries to do, and what our screening codes are. And then eligibility criteria is what I really want to look at, which is, first of all, publication language. If an abstract's reported in English, essentially it's in. We must have an explicit or major focus on living evidence synthesis. So articles with a minor focus on living evidence synthesis in general, or a specific kind of living evidence synthesis, are excluded. And we include articles that are about the planning, conduct and reporting, dissemination and use of living evidence synthesis, and also articles that just describe the concept and methods of living evidence synthesis, what living evidence synthesis is. They're also included. And we include articles that cover a range of different research questions about living evidence syntheses. Protocols and errata for eligible articles are also included. Just back to the map. So we can see that on the right-hand side here, the articles listed publications by year. You can click on the All Records button at the top to find all 157 records that are currently in the map. And then from there, you can click on each individual record. Let's go for this one. And you can see the abstract and the authors. You can click to show the full record. And as I say, there'll be more classification and coding over time. But you can click to show the coding of the record, which at the moment is that it's in all versions and version 1 up to December 2025, because it was published in, when was it, 2022. And it's about living systematic reviews. So minimal coding so far, but as I say, that coding scheme is going to be developed. We're primarily in the phase of identifying eligible articles at the moment, and kind of getting up to date to at least the end of 2025 and into 2026. If I go back home again, you can get frequencies if you click on the parent code here. So if I click on frequencies, then frequencies will appear down here in a second, hopefully, and I can turn that into a bar chart or a pie chart. So you can see that most of the records, or the most prevalent records about living systematic reviews, there can be about more than one of these things. Some things are about living reviews and guidelines. There's one record that's about living economic models so far. And then we've got a few records that are in the other category that's just about to get plugged in. that will be coded with the other category actually, and rather than none of the above. Just need to switch that button on and to do it in time for this, but forgot. And then once you've got this, so if I wanted to list everything that was about living guidelines, and I could click on living guidelines and list records, go back to this view here, as well as clicking on the individual records that I showed you before, I can search as well for, I can export the records either to citations or to a RIS file for all the records on the page, or I can filter the page and then export those records, or to an Excel file. So if I clicked on to RIS, then it would export a RIS file that contains all of those items, all those 52 items in RIS file. There we go. Yeah. If I just go back to the home tab for a second, you can do it from here as well. You can also have basic search functions, so you can search for records that contain certain things in the type or the abstract, authors, publication year. So I could search, for example, for all records that contain the term automation. If I can spell it. There we go. Using automation to produce a living map. Crowdsourcing and automation. So you've got basic search features there. You can go back home. This living map is maintained by a small working group of members from that ESG's best practice working group, and who also help maintain the LES Toolkit. And that's all I want to show you today. So thanks very much for listening.
Wow, thank you so much, Ian. In a few minutes, you've been able to walk us through this database in a very detailed way, and it's really a great job that the program is undertaking, especially the group. And especially when you look at this point where it's open access and it is searchable, I can see that you can bring in your topic and be able to search and have the different authors that are popping in and even the year of their work. This is a very rich toolkit that is giving us multiplicity of products that we can pick from: the protocols, the articles, the publication, the guidance notes, the methodologies. It's a very beautiful thing for us to be able to benefit from, and especially from an established group of organizations that have brought themselves together to provide this service. So we have some questions that have popped up in the chat, but before we go into the chat, I want to request the coordinator to also bring in the chat the website for where Ian is picking the presentation from. I see at least you've brought the links or the website for Arise, so that as we talk, the other participants can be able to also navigate and ask the questions that they may have about this work that we are talking about. So I'll go to, first of all, just a kind of trigger to ask a few questions that can get us. Okay, I think Ian posted. I'm scrolling backwards. Have I seen it?
Yeah, I think you did, and then we'll just need to put it there. That's okay. Thanks.
Okay. Yeah, so I just wanted us to first quickly open up for some kind of quick discussions on the floor. When we look at where the presentation came from, especially our first presenter, Kaitlyn, presenting the source and how this information is transformed to get to a point that it is usable. What will be some of your joys and pains that you will say you've gone through from the context and that you're operating in? I'm opening this to the participants on the floor to share their experiences on the joys and the pains of producing evidence in the context that you're operating in, and especially when you look at how rich the presentation has come through on these databases? What are some of those things that you go through in producing and ensuring that this evidence that you're producing is available for the audience that you work with?
So I guess from my side, the joys are really about when it actually comes together and we manage to get the web application at the end and the users can go on and find evidence that they maybe weren't aware of or hadn't seen before. Because I think quite often when you speak to people in the field, for example, in the biomedical space, people think they maybe know all the literature that's going on and they know the research trends and directions, but actually when they see it all visualized, sometimes that changes. So I think there's a lot of joy in that process. Um, and I would say that the pains for me are silly things that I don't feel like humans should have to do anymore, like manually
Okay.
downloading hundreds of thousands of papers from PubMed or or
Okay.
Scopus. Yeah.
Great. Ian.
Well, I mean, we get to work out, as I say, on some of these evidence synthesis groups. So I get to work on a core evidence synthesis group that does reviews that inform, health policy decisions across a range of stakeholder evaluations. And so, and we have the Department of Health Reviews facility at the EPPI-Centre as well. So I'm into developing methods, so that's a great kind of environment to develop methods, and that's the joy. And working with some of the brightest and best people in the field of evidence synthesis to help develop and deploy and evaluate better systems and methods and tools for evidence synthesis, including living evidence synthesis, is one of the joys. And being able to produce evidence synthesis whose findings are more or less guaranteed to have a direct impact on public policy is a joy and not one that everybody experiences who produces systematic reviews. Because the reviews that we do are commissioned by and produced to meet the specific needs of precisely those policymakers who need to use the findings to inform decisions that then will ultimately, hopefully, positively influence people's lives. And I also like doing another joy is I love doing high volume routine evidence synthesis tasks like eligibility screening. So I hope the robots never completely take that joy away. Pains also working with some of the less bright people in the field. Maybe I don't know. No, seriously. I tried to think what the pains were, and curiously, whilst I can feel quite a lot of pain on a day-to-day basis, I'm strangely unable to articulate what they are.
Okay. Thank you. And maybe the last one before we get to our participants. In terms of carrying forward these exciting initiatives that you're already working with, what are the steps? What do you envision on how to better facilitate the use of these tools? You've taken a lot of time and resources to put them together, but how do you envision that these tools can be used further in supporting evidence use? And in case you have some success stories of where we've been able to apply some of this so that we can see how we can domesticate or customize this to fit within our context. I'll start with you, Ian.
Well, I mean, in terms of the Living Evidence Synthesis Toolkit, we just hope really that people producing living evidence synthesis will consult it and use the resources in it to help produce better conducted and better reported and perhaps also more impactful living evidence syntheses. Success stories, none yet. It's still early days, and we've not really started to try and think about gathering impact stories from people using the toolkit yet. But hopeful that there might be some positive impact in success stories from people using it over time.
Okay. And to you, Kaitlyn?
Yeah, I think for the Souls work so far, it's mainly been focused around trying to encourage uptake for, first of all, biomedical researchers to use it for a lot of the preclinical knowledge-based souls projects to help them figure out basically what's already been done, because there's just so much evidence out there. So it's kind of helping them figure out what's already been done so they can maybe better plan their next experiment. That's one use case. And then obviously the second use case is for evidence synthesis themselves, so someone who wants to do a systematic review in a given area. In terms of success stories, I can say that we've recently completed a project where we were looking to replicate a systematic review in the preclinical space. So this was a systematic review in animal models of Alzheimer's disease. And we essentially did it manually. We replicated everything according to the paper, and then we used the Alzheimer's disease Souls platform to retrieve the studies. So we started at a later starting point, and we were able to retrieve all the studies in that systematic review, and it took much less time than it would have taken if we went through it manually. So that's one recent success story. So I hope that it can kind of replace some of those early steps, at least for some research domains, to take out some of the time spent screening and gathering all the data together.
Wow. Okay, thank you so much. Once again, I really appreciate that you've taken time to share your knowledge, share tools. These are some of the tools that I believe most of our participants here have always desired to have access to, and either they don't have access because we're always worrying about issues that are behind paywalls. But here we are with an open access tool that the project, the toolkit, and also these projects that are enabling us to learn even further. Back to the charts, I see there was a question from this was Alicia, and the question has been answered. Alicia, I hope we are okay there. This question has already been answered. I want to pick the one that I've not seen the answer to it from Leah Moy. Are the targeted users of the tools or databases mainly researchers or users? So that's the question that I see here. Maybe we can give this to Ian as I look for another question that has not been responded to. So some of your responses are already there in the chat. I want to see if there are members that want to raise any additional clarification on these questions. Ian, can you first answer this one from Leah?
Yes, I'll go ahead and answer. Yeah. The Living Evidence Synthesis Toolkit and the resources that it currently contains are primarily for researchers, but we hope that as we realise the group's aim of developing some agreed criteria and guidance for the use and application of living evidence synthesis to inform policy practice and research decisions and the topic suitability stuff, that we'll have more resources there that are co-produced with and for users and commissioners of evidence synthesis and living evidence synthesis.
Okay, thank you. The question from, I think, is that Biljana? Forgive me if I don't pronounce your name very well. I see it was already also answered in terms of supporting data extraction. I see we already have an answer there in the chat. Do we have any other pending question that we want to raise? We have our 5 minutes in case you have any contribution that you want to add, or clarification, or a story that you can pick from any of these tools that you think we could get to hear in a minute on how you could have applied any of these tools. The floor is open.
Giuseppe, I think Pasquilla posted in the chat some of the questions that were coming in the Q&A channel.
So there is the one for Joe Thompson. Have you done any testing in the project? This goes to Kaitlyn, and we also have the one that is anonymous. Is the aim for SOLS to be a place where other review groups can use the latest data sets to conduct a specific review or on a sub-question? Can you pick these two, Kaitlyn?
Yeah, So the first one, have we done any testing? So I guess that was an example of a test that we did recently, which was the replication attempt using the Souls platform, and that we found that basically we were able to find everything faster and got the same results at the end as the original review. So, but we've only done that really formally in one space. We've done some more informal evaluations across different souls, but what we really need to do now is kind of collate them together and have a really clear method for validating across the different souls platforms. Because although they use similar methodology, we kind of need to validate for each one. So that's how I would answer that question. And is the aim for souls? Yeah, so I would say that is the primary aim actually, is for people who are working in a certain space, they can use it to get to the studies of relevance much faster than conducting maybe the earlier stages of a systematic review, or they can use it potentially to, as you sort of say, update their review with the latest evidence.
Okay, thank you. I have two more, and then we can proceed to the next part of the program. One is, how many errors are people finding with the LLM data? Over what time period or what numbers of record items? It's a broad one, but I hope you'll be able to answer, Kaitlyn. And then we have one in the chat. How do you handle gray database? Those are the two that I have for you, Kaitlyn.
Yeah, so the first one, it's tricky to say because we haven't had a lot of people yet going in and making changes to the LLM annotations or suggesting suggesting edits or asking for studies to be removed. So it's quite hard to answer that question. What I would say is we did a small amount of validation and we're planning on doing more because we're not really happy that we've kind of done enough. But we validated on just under 100, we had 100 papers that were fully annotated by humans, and then we fully tested the LLM-based approach on 50. So it's relatively small numbers. I would like to expand that approach. I won't have time to go through all the numbers, but what I would say is if you look on the methodology section of the iRise Souls app or the data transparency page, it has quite a lot of detail there on what the actual results were.
And how often do you check for retractions?
Retractions, I'm trying to remember actually how often we check. I think it might be every 6 months. So we run a check. It's based on OpenAlex actually. So OpenAlex has information about retractions. So I will maybe check that, but I think it's every 6 months we basically run a check on all the articles in our database and flag the retracted ones. So users can choose to exclude them when they're downloading their results, for example. And I didn't answer about grey literature, sorry. The grey literature is not a part of all the Souls databases, but it is part of the iRise database. And at the moment, the grey literature that we're capturing is mainly things like conference abstracts and theses, where they're available in preprints, because these are available using the Web of Science API or the Scopus API, for example. So we've not kind of scaled up to be able to automate the grey literature in the way that we'd like to. We're really just capturing a portion of it. But we separate it out on the app as well to make clear that it is different.
Okay. Thank you very much. The issue raised by Bekele, I think it's to all of us. It's a request to all of us, but maybe you could also send it direct to our coordinator in case something comes up. I can't promise, but in case something comes up, just send it through the coordinator. I want to once again thank all of you for this active participation. Can we move this slide to... Okay, so this is our next session, just for us to know where we will be picking up from here. Our next session is on what makes evidence impactful in an AI-enabled world. And I like it that Kaitlyn is mentioning that we don't have to go, her pain is that we should not suffer so much. So I think this is an answered issue already. We want to dive into AI-enabled world. It's a joint session with Covidence, and these are our speakers, Matthew and Arash. And in the chat, we have already posted for you the registration link. Which dates are these? Christian, which dates are these?
Or should I include that? I think it's May 4th, I think. But let
So
me
May
just
4th.
no, it's more May 5th, sorry. Yeah.
May
May
5th.
5th. Yeah.
Yeah, so May 5th, we'll be having this session. Please be on the lookout and register in advance so that we can keep you posted. And also just to let you know that we submitted an abstract for a live forum under the GLOCO. So in June, we will start sharing out information, but in June, in the first week of June, is when the GLOCO is held 1st to 5th. We've put our dates, but usually after they have reconciled their program, they get back to the presenters to confirm the exact dates, but also just be on the lookout that we'll have a session under GLOCO for a live forum. I want to thank each one of us and especially our presenters. Can I hand over to you now at this point, Christian?
Yeah,
You're
sorry.
sharing you're sharing an interesting screen that I prefer. I give it to handle.
No, thank you for that. Just like maybe 5 seconds. Just like this is like you mentioned, like both of the initiatives that were presented today are included in the Living Evidence Atlas. I think Ian just like briefly mentioned it. It's just like if you could just help us out, like grow this map, I think it could be great. So we could just like grow our community of like giving the different living evidence efforts that are available there, right? So I just like put the chat on the chat, the link of the Living Evidence Atlas for anything that could just like come up. Yeah. That's it.
So members, thank you once again. We really thank you for creating time to join this very informative session. And you already have access to the links. Try out, the best way is to try out these tools by yourself and benefit the institution that you're in so that other people can also learn from your participation today, and we'll keep spreading this message as broad and wide as possible. So Kaitlyn and Ian, 1 minute, we are closing. Your parting remarks.
Just thanks very much, everybody, and thanks, Kaitlyn, for an interesting presentation as well. Enjoy the resources.
Yeah,
Thank you.
thanks everyone. Thanks Ian for your talk as well.
Okay, thank you very much once again, members, and enjoy your day, your morning, your evening, from wherever you connected from. Once again, I appreciate that I was the moderator, and goodbye for now.
Thank you. Bye.